Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode here at the Damage Report under quarantine conditions. And it being a Tuesday, hey, what do you know? Emma's here.
Hey,
How's it going, Emma?
I'm good.
It's been
How
a
are
while.
you, John? I'm good.
I'm doing well. Glad to have you back on. It has been a while. I don't know. Are you using a different camera? It looks a little bit sharper, maybe.
Well, I'm not using a different camera, but it seems like the control room has been up to their little machinations and made me look like, 0.5% better than I normally would, rolling out of bed and smearing makeup on my face.
That's the process. Yes. Hopefully they'll do it for me as well, because I couldn't even be bothered to do that. Anyway, glad to have you here. There's a lot that we're going to be talking about. There's a pandemic. I guess we'll touch base with it. Let's see. We've got the environment, or what's left of it. We're talking on one episode of the Damage Report about sports and music. How did it come to this? But we're gonna need your perspective on those topics, Emma.
Music, I don't know anything, but sports, I have some opinions.
Okay. Well, we're definitely gonna get to that. Everyone who is already joining us in the chat, thank you so much. I can see a ton of comments rolling in. Happy to see Emma here. We're 50-50 happy, but they're
Right.
about you. No, I'm kidding. No, they're obviously very happy to have you here. Everybody who is in the chat, please hit the like button. Let people know that the stream is going on. You can share it and all of that. And if you chat along or send us tweets at #TDR Live or super chats, or if you're on the Twitchers, we'll be responding to some of those as we go as well. Two quick things before we jump into the stories. One, I want to give you an update on the imminent spread of coronavirus through schools. Yesterday, we talked about how at North Paulding High School, the school that was my garbage person of the week last week, they had a lockdown because of coronavirus spread. We now have, in the 6 days that Cherokee County schools have been in session, the North Georgia District has had to direct 826 students to quarantine due to exposure to COVID-19, along with 42 teachers. That's in less than a week. So that's exciting. What a great idea. Send kids back to school in a pandemic.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. I was just doing a study on or story on it the other day, just about how they keep talking about how they're basically immune from it, and that's not even true. But even if that were the case, they spread it to other people. That's what drives me insane.
It's the worst. And then the other bit of news is not only do we have a special tonight on the Young Turks, we've got the What Does the Future Look Like special being hosted by Cenk Uygur at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on all of the places where you watch bits being converted into video. And Cenk is going to be joined by guests Andrew Yang, Derek Johnson, Dolores Huerta, Nomi Prinz, Nicholas Thompson, and more. So that should be a lot of fun. That's tonight. Next week, of course, is the Democratic National Convention, which I had been very much looking forward to for about a year and a half, up to about a few months ago. And now I guess it's going to happen. I don't know. Emma, you excited at all?
Yeah, I'm thrilled for these awkward virtual speeches, but at least Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders are speaking.
Exactly. And so we're going to be doing live commentary and analysis each night, I think with a different guest joining Cenk. I'm going to be doing the first night, which is awesome because Bernie Sanders is going to be speaking that night. And so, if I could have chosen any night, that would have been the second night that I would have chosen. Tuesdays when AOC speaks, and I won't be doing live commentary, unfortunately. But someone will be. Someone will be. And eventually, the VP pick will be there, whoever that is. I know that people are looking at the list of speakers and trying to reverse engineer. Wait, if Kamala is speaking that night, then that means she can't be the VP. And I just think, wait, you don't think that they lie? Like they can change a graphic later. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I could totally see it being Susan. I don't think it's going to be Kamala Harris, even though I was duped that she unfollowed him on Twitter.
That was funny. Wait, so okay, this it could be released today or it could be released tomorrow. We don't know. Do you want to make last prediction?
I would bet it's Susan Rice at this point, which would be extremely disappointing, and who cares? But I would rather have Kamala Harris than Susan Rice.
I agree with you there, and I'll say my pick is that it will be Kamala Harris, I think.
Okay.
And I would prefer her. I would prefer many other people to her, but I guess I'd prefer her over Susan Rice.
Right. I know. You don't think Karen Bass has a shot?
They keep saying it. I don't know. The thing is, it's like Karen Bass isn't Bernie, but
Right.
like compared to most of the other high-profile picks, she seems like this DSA member or something.
Right. Well, she's the most progressive option of those three, and Susan Rice is probably the least, and also the least inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, if she was picked, you know, being my representative, someone would have to fill that spot. I don't know. Anyway, no, I think it's going to probably be Kamala Harris. But anyway, we're going to have commentary all throughout the DNC, and we're going to try to have fun with it. It's not going to be the same as 2016 when we were traveling to the conventions, which was so awesome. But what's awesome in 2020? Nothing. So get used to it. Anyway, with that, why don't we jump into the news, Emma?
Shall we?
We shall. Let's do it. All throughout this pandemic, I have been continually saying that the right-wing acceptance of an ever-increasing death toll of 1,000 people plus on most days, 162,000 or 3,000 total as of today, overall, they never would have accepted this under a different president and pretended bang-up job that was being done. That seems pretty clear to me. But what does Trump think? What would he have been saying if it had been Obama? A reporter put that question to him. Let's see what he says.
60,000 people had died on President Obama's watch. Do you think you would have called for his resignation?
No, I wouldn't have done that. I think it's been amazing what we've been able to do. If we didn't close up our country, we would have had 1.5 or 2 million people already dead. We've called it right. Now we don't have to close it. We understand the disease. Nobody understood it because nobody's ever seen anything like it.
Well, they didn't understand it because it's not that they haven't seen anything like it. They haven't seen it because it wasn't around. It's also why we didn't have tests for it. Anyway, so he would not have asked Obama to resign if Obama had presided over 163,000 deaths, including a big spike over the past few weeks.
Yeah, that certainly doesn't pass the smell test. That's insanity. He was up in arms about almost everything Obama did, from Common coming to the White House for a poetry session to, I don't know, Obama just being black and having a father from a different country. He must have not been from here, right? Oh, he's different. He's different. That was the whole purpose of birtherism, was to say he was an illegitimate president and that he should resign, which basically boiled down to resign for being black, looking different than how I want a president to look, and representing something like change, which doesn't sit well with me. So he wanted Obama out for that very purpose. And let alone how they keep trying to compare Trump's COVID response to President Obama's Ebola response in a way to hit Joe Biden, which is like the wettest part of an argument that I can think of. It falls so flat. I mean, no one remembers Ebola in the way that everyone's going to remember coronavirus, which caused an economic depression, which caused tens of millions of people to lose their jobs and be on unemployment, which caused countless deaths. So nobody is going to think of that in the same terms. Most people probably think of Ebola in passing, but this is going to dominate an entire year and an entire election, and Trump's in trouble because of that.
Yeah, look, Ebola has and continues to occasionally devastate certain countries. We just weren't one of them. That's all. Still a tragedy, just not an American tragedy. The pandemic that we're currently in is a worldwide tragedy, and especially an American tragedy. So here's the thing. It's fun, I guess, to ask hypothetical questions about whether he would do something if it was Obama, but we don't need to go to hypotheticals because, as with everything, there's a tweet for that. So this is the time in the show where we pointlessly point out hypocrisy, even though it doesn't matter. Donald Trump tweeted back on October 23rd, 2014, if this doctor who so recklessly flew into New York from West Africa has Ebola, then Obama should apologize to the American people and resign. Not if that doctor flies into New York, spreads Ebola, and then it spreads more and more and more until 160,000 people die. If that one person had it, he should resign. Just off of that. And then he said, this is actually slightly earlier, 2 weeks earlier, he says, Obama won't send troops to fight jihadists, yet sends them to Liberia to contract Ebola. He is a delusional failure. So when he sent our troops to try to help people, and theoretically to help stop it from spreading to other countries, he was a delusional failure for trying to stop a virus from getting into Americans spreading, even though in hindsight it didn't spread. So it seems kind of successful. Should have resigned, should be a failure. And one other point, by the way, he tweeted that anyone who gets Ebola, that Obama should go and should hug them warmly. Everybody who contracts this disease. So we don't need the hypotheticals. He did ask for him to resign, even though basically no one at that point had died. 11 people were treated for Ebola during that pandemic. Over 5 million people in the U.S. have been diagnosed with the coronavirus.
Yeah, it's not comparable. Obviously, Ebola more deadly, but less contagious than coronavirus. So I'll give Trump just that, only that, because the rest of it is absolute absurdity. And yeah, hypocrisy shaming, it's fun. It makes liberals feel good. It does nothing for the discourse.
It does nothing.
Yeah, I mean, because they're not acting on rationality, they're acting on emotion, and they feel like they love Trump, and they love that he's entertaining and that he says the things that they want him to say about immigrants, about the economy, about America, about jingoism, and makes them feel warm and fuzzy. You can't hypocrisy shame when it comes down to emotion, because when you're emotional, you're a hypocrite all the time. So
exactly.
That's
I'm going to keep doing it because it does make me feel good, and because I feel like the things that we've said and done should matter, but I get that they don't. Okay.
I like it. For commentary purposes, it's awesome. For democratic strategy purposes, obviously, Democrats need to make their own case. That's the only way that they win.
Exactly. And, I am watching the YouTube chat. I apologize that my Trump voice apparently now sounds like Zoolander, which is weird because I've never seen Zoolander. Anyway.
That is outrageous.
I know. I actually fell asleep while trying to watch it the first time.
It's actually bad, but there's so many great lines, and I love it. But watching it as an adult, it's not great. And I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, and the critics had some interesting things to say.
I bet. Yeah. I need to eventually watch it. I'll get around to it. Let's see a little bit more from this though out of Trump. Donald Trump at this press conference actually acknowledged that the virus is very bad, and he tried to invoke history while talking about it, and you can probably imagine how that went.
Never seen anything like this. The closest thing is in 1917, they say, right? The great pandemic certainly was a terrible thing where they lost anywhere from 50 to 100 million people. Probably ended the Second World War. All the soldiers were sick. That was a terrible situation, and this is highly contagious.
If I could reference a historical document just briefly, Mr. President, what you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. None of that was accurate. That's not how history works.
Did he say 50 to 100 million?
I didn't even pay attention to that part. He implied that World War II ended because of the Spanish flu decades before World War II.
He meant World War I?
I think he might have meant World War I, but the thing was, he didn't say like WW2, like a quick thing. He said the Second World War. Anyway, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. It's just, Jesus, come on.
That's pretty basic historical knowledge. But he loves this country. He's a true American. So he has, books upon books upon books about all of the soldiers and the troops who sacrificed their lives for this great country, except he can't remember anything about that.
Exactly. And here's the thing, like that video clip is getting played a lot over the past day, mainly because of his ridiculous historical thing. But that isn't the part that I think we should really focus on. The part we should focus on is that in that clip, he says it's really contagious, really bad. No one's seen anything like this. No, but then, okay, let's focus on that for a bit. If it's that bad, if it's that contagious that you're now referencing, then why are you pushing for us to open up schools? Why are you pushing for us to have football, which we're going to be talking about later? Why are you doing all of these things if you're now acknowledging that this is a historic level like challenge that we've faced? And I understand why he's doing it. He's doing it to then pat himself on the back for doing a good job in a difficult circumstance. But we're still in that circumstance, and we need to recognize it if we're going to have any chance of limiting the spread in the future.
What if I don't have anything to add for that? I thought I would just give a clean break for the clip. Clean clip break.
Okay. I appreciate a clean break better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And we're on one. Okay. Then in that case, let's move on. So Trump had his executive orders to help people out during the pandemic, even though they don't actually help people out. They're not going to really do anything, and they're probably illegal anyway. But on top of that, as we mentioned yesterday, more pointless acknowledgement of hypocrisy, he would attack Obama constantly during his years for the executive orders that he's doing. So I understand that he doesn't care about that hypocrisy. Does Kayleigh McEnany? Let's see.
Back on the executive orders the president signed this weekend, as a candidate, Donald Trump criticized fairly sharply Barack Obama's use of executive orders and faulting him for failing to reach deals with members of Congress. How were the president's actions this weekend any different from President Obama's?
They're a lot different when you consider the fact that President Barack Obama utilized executive order to push forward a policy that he denied he had the right to push forward 23 times on DAPA and on DACA. He said at least 23 times, I don't have the power to do this. And then he went on to do just that. I've already listed out and enumerated the various legal authorities on the part of the president. And in terms of deal making, I would note that the CARES Act was landmark legislation, at really the height of this pandemic, that brought relief to the American people, and that was negotiated within 1 week from first drafting to enactment. And by comparison, if we want to go back to President Obama, the American Recovery Act during the Great Recession took roughly 3 months from inception to enactment as law under single-party control. This president managed to push the CARES Act through divided government, a very big accomplishment on the part of the president.
She's impressed by him. I mean, she is paid to be, after all. And I love that, as always, her strategy is just, oh, what noun did you say? Here, let me flip to that noun, and I'll just read you the block paragraph I have prepared for it.
She's the best one they've had so far. I mean,
you think?
Yeah, I think she's pretty better at the obfuscation, and she just has that press background, so you can, as you said, I mean, I think it's sleazier in a way.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, pointing out that some of the executive orders that Trump was against, that you say Obama shouldn't have had the ability to do that. Okay, that's fine. First of all, he didn't criticize Obama for one particular executive order. He criticized him specifically for using executive orders when he can't get people together, which is exactly the situation that we've got right now. And the issue is that many people are saying, as I acknowledged in the intro, that Trump's current executive orders are also not legal. So that's not a difference between those two things. That's the same consideration. I think a lot of Americans can get behind at least a general idea that presidents sometimes go above and beyond their actual powers when using executive orders, and perhaps we should restrain that. Maybe we should not just have that opinion when it's the other person in charge. You can criticize Obama and Trump for doing that. And in terms of like comparing how long it took the recovery packages to be put together, how does that make what Trump's doing better now? I mean, the CARES Act was passed literally months ago. Like 100,000+ people have died since then. And he hasn't been able to bring people together. It's just such a ridiculous response. And I understand we can't expect much better out of her, but considering the stakes, they got to put more pressure on her. She can't just read a paragraph and then move on to the next question. Yeah. That doesn't actually address anything.
Yeah, and then I just also want to point out that I think it is different in that, look, I mean, Bush opened the Pandora's box of the executive orders and the presidency being all powerful and basically bending the Constitution and the law. And then Obama followed suit, and Trump is doing the same thing. So we can be critical of Obama as well. But one, the DACA thing was to protect children and people who've known nothing but this country from being deported because Republicans refused to push immigration reform through and vote on it, or vote on a humane bill. And secondly, it's even more unconstitutional what Trump's doing because Congress explicitly has the power of the purse. Like, there's no legal framework and jujitsu that you can use to get around this. No. These are explicitly what Congress needs to be deciding on. They're issues of money, financing the country, and stimulus, basically. So there's no way you can make a case for the legality of what Trump is advocating for his memos, as I saw the Washington Post was kind of tongue-in-cheek referring to his executive orders as.
Yeah, and which he, while signing, referred to as bills, which they are decidedly not. You can watch Schoolhouse Rock or whatever if you want a preview of why exactly they're not bills. And I would say, look, the question about their legality is important, especially because of precedent being set or continued, as you pointed out, since the Bush years of an ever-expanding number and size of the executive orders. But also, you should be concerned about the actual substance of the executive orders, and everyone should go and watch our breakdown yesterday. They don't do, basically none of them do what they say they're supposed to do. And the ones that kind of do a version of what they say they're going to do it in a way that causes more damage than it solves. So there's a lot of issues. And I know that the press isn't going to focus on that a ton. But again, if the Senate and the House aren't going to actually pass anything, his executive orders, I guess, are what we have. And what we have is basically nothing.
Yeah, I love the eviction moratorium that isn't an eviction moratorium and just basically says, look into if an eviction moratorium is possible. But the Trump marketing arm, aka his entire presidency, calls it an eviction moratorium.
Exactly. Yeah, talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. When is an eviction moratorium not actually about stopping evictions and isn't a moratorium? Exactly.
Yeah, it's Orwellian, but also hilarious if you're not looking at the massive human cost that it's going to inflict upon the United States. Great.
Yeah, and you can tell that we are, or at least for me, because I develop about one white beard hair a day, actually, at this point. The human cost is killing me. Anyway, before we jump into other news, let's take a look at what the audience has been saying in the Twitches and the Super Chats and all of that. Rob Shively says, can we have Dragon Squad code names? If so, can mine be Robo Shiv or just the Shiv for short? Stake a claim. If you want to take it. Science Bunnies says, thanks for the stream, John. Thank you, Science Bunnies. Luminia says, love you, John and Emma. Thank you. Robert V says, I hope Paige figures it out. Also, do you follow Beau of the Fifth Column at all? I can't say that I do, unfortunately, although I have seen references to it in the chat before. Kai Allen says, yay, hey, Emma, missed seeing you on TDR and looking forward to your insightful and sarcastic commentary.
Why, thank you. I do enjoy sarcasm.
Exactly. Let's see. Steve Master says, greetings from the tree protectors in the wood that inspired Roald Dahl's Fantastic Mr. Fox. Another voice, WB, due to be destroyed for the HS2. I don't know exactly what this is a reference to, but thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Peter Michael says, yay, Emma. It's so good to see you back on TDR today.
Thank you.
Lil Yumper says, the return of Johnny and the Vig. Nice. Oh, and so I don't think since you were last on, it's become a thing where everyone who comes on the show gets designated as a Marvel superhero. And there's been some suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny from Philly says, TYT welcomes Captain America and Captain Marvel.
You're Captain America?
No, I assumed you were Captain America. I'm Captain Marvel. I can fly.
No.
Yes, obviously you're Captain Marvel. Are you a fan of Captain Marvel? Is that who you would pick?
I didn't like that movie that much, but someone said I look like Brie Larson, so
you do a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I could see it, and I'm not hating. I mean, she's pretty awesome. So I just thought that movie. I was a little disappointed coming off Wonder Woman, which I thought was amazing. So
I thought it was good. It wasn't one of the best, but it was fine, I think.
Yeah, it's just pretty forgettable.
Yeah. She was good in Endgame, though. I did like her.
Oh, yeah.
I just wish there'd been more of her. Over on Twitch, Nordelict has given a few tier 1 subs. Thank you for that. Namen Lavita Pora has as well. Thank you. Precocious Vixen handing out those gift subs. Thank you. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, as always, handing out gift subs. Thank you to all of you for helping ambassadors for the channel and for the network. On Twitch, Galfar71 says, greetings and salutations, Dragon Squad. Thank you, Galfar. Hello to you as well. Perculator tweeted us at hashtag TDR Live saying, wettest fart of an excuse. That's awesome. I need to work that into my vocabulary. Thanks, Emma.
I kind of regret it because it's disgusting, but remember me as you wish.
I will. Brittany tweeted us saying, the face my son makes when the camera focuses on Emma Vigeland, he's her littlest big fan. And it's this little child smiling when you appear on the screen.
That's so damn cute. Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, with that, let's proceed with the news. Oh, God. Okay. We've been talking for the past bit about the most recent efforts to manipulate or hamstring the census to provide some sort of electoral benefit to the right, although understand that this effort has been ongoing since Donald Trump has gotten into office. Let's talk about the newest issues, and that's how prematurely ending the census count is going to do significant damage, but not necessarily equally to all communities. So understand that federal funding for elections, education, free and reduced lunch programs, and other community programs is determined based on census data. So it touches on a lot of different programs, including the allocation of funds in a number of different ways. Now, because of delays caused by the pandemic, the federal government earlier this year extended the deadline for in-person follow-up. That's when you actually have somebody visit you to do the count, from mid-August to October 31st. But the administration abruptly announced last week that it would require data collection to end by September 30th instead. So they realized early on that because it's a pandemic, they can't do it in the normal time. So it was extended. For some reason, the government decided, oh no, you don't need all the time you think you need to get this done. We're going to cut it off. And if that means that not everyone gets counted, well, boo-hoo, I guess that's on you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the implications, but Emma, I'm curious about what your thoughts have been about the attempts to rig or manipulate or bias the census.
It's a part and parcel of an administration that politicizes even the most benign elements of governing. So they want immigrants and poorer people, and specifically Democratic voters as well, to be underrepresented and punish them for their beliefs, for their backgrounds. And we've seen this from just quotidian daily machinations and what normal presidents would kind of do whatever they want with and wouldn't pay attention to. But Trump has stacked his administration with white supremacists and extremists. And so this is what happens. It does trickle down. You do see, we've seen it with the CDC as well, and the collection of coronavirus data. This is what happens when you have an extremist and someone who doesn't really have empathy or connection to other human beings. So he's going to implement his ideology every which way, even in bureaucratic ways that are supposed to be divorced from politics.
Yeah, unfortunately. And he's, as we'll get to, he's tried this in other ways. The end goal of all of their efforts when it comes to the census is to benefit Republicans and undercount Democrats or libs or people who might vote for those, basically because of the impact, particularly on allocation and proportion of political power. And so that is likely to happen. Now, you might think, well, if they just don't have enough time to complete it, and if they cut off 10 or 20 or 30% of households, then why is that unfair in a political sense? I mean, they're just not finishing their job. It's because that the people that they're not going to be reaching are not evenly distributed. That's just not how it works. In terms of their ability to quickly get to certain groups, I've seen citations towards it's more difficult for them to do an accurate count for communities of color, people living in rural areas, those without permanent addresses, high poverty areas, immigrant communities, and places where government distrust is high. Some of those might be the same areas, But the idea is that those sorts of people are going to be reached last and least if we don't have an all-encompassing full census that has the time it takes.
And just quick, oh, sorry, John, if I were
continue.
Just a quick point too, just in poorer communities as well, they're more likely to be at work in a pandemic because they're working like wage jobs or essential worker jobs or minimum wage jobs that, so they may have been laid off as well, who knows, but a lot of people who can't afford to stay home and their jobs don't permit it aren't going to be if they're on the poorer side.
Exactly. And Skip, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. The issue is that this is the most recent issue, is that they're artificially cutting the timeline. Like, they didn't make the pandemic, although I guess they did make the pandemic worse and longer than it needed to be. But deciding arbitrarily that you're going to stop the census before they say they're ready to be done, that is on the government. It's their choice, and they're doing it knowing who that's going to hurt. And bear in mind, how long is this going to hurt those communities for? In less funding and less political power, literally seats that they'll have access to electing people into. For a decade, it's going to hurt them. Long after whoever wins in November is gone, or even possibly the person that succeeds them, it's still going to be having these effects. And like I said, I'm going to jump ahead. Last year, the U.S. Supreme Court stopped the census from asking participants if they're American citizens, which activists and experts said would discourage undocumented people from participating, and which we found out, thanks to the leak of, I believe, the daughter of one of the people putting together the scheme, was explicitly the goal, was to cut out certain types of people. And just last month, President Trump signed a memorandum in support of excluding the estimated number of undocumented immigrants in the country from the count used to apportion congressional districts, which he can't do in any way, but is obviously explicitly designed, despite the fact that it goes 100% against the clear wording of the Constitution, to arbitrarily deduct however many people they want from certain districts and not others. I mean, if they were able to go through with that in particular, like, then the democracy is even, like, I know that it's sort of a sham now, but just let him decide who gets all the seats. I mean, what's the difference at that point if they can just decide how many people really count in any of these areas?
It's another part of the ideology of voter suppression and gerrymandering. And this is a way that we're seeing it done on the federal level, where you just say, no, those people don't count because, one, I don't like them, and two, it doesn't help my cause of cementing my party's reign over the country for long. I mean, they're Machiavellian, and the Democrats do not have that kind of thinking on their side, except for a very select few people who want to win and want to play hardball. That's just not how Democrats view things. And in many ways, that's good, but in many ways, it's bad because Republicans and their far-right ideology are overrepresented and also just propagandize and push towards people that would be more open to a populist economic message. And a lot of that also does fall on the Democrats to make that central to their platform as opposed to ancillary. And focusing on vague cultural issues that don't resonate. And we're going to see, not to go on a rant about the Democrats, but one, if these voter suppression tactics work, if they can overwhelm what seems to be at this point a landslide victory for Joe Biden, which we can't rule out. And two, if the Democrats can counter this with their own vision for America, vague as it may be, with Biden as the nominee.
Yeah. And in this area in particular, we'll see. Like, a democracy cannot survive, or it can't mean anything, if one party takes every opportunity they have to undercut it in literally every way, legal, illegal, constitutional, unconstitutional, and then it passes to the other party, maybe, and they do absolutely nothing to stop that or to reverse that. And then we go back to the one party and they chip even more away at it. And that's what we've had. We had, Obama had effectively unified government for a period. Did we get a national, voting holiday? Did we get, we didn't get any of this stuff. All of what the pro-democracy activists, and we need to start talking about these, because I know we only talk about pro-democracy activists in other countries, the bad countries that don't have their stuff together. No, we need pro-democracy activists here in the United States, people who actually care about voter suppression and gerrymandering and the manipulation of the census and a million other things. The effective poll taxes that they have, and they just sort of added one in terms of mail-in voting recently. The disenfranchisement in Florida of, the felons who were recently given the ability to vote, all of that. We need to identify and respect what these activists are saying. And hopefully Biden will actually do something about it, because unfortunately, when Obama was in power, he didn't do nearly enough.
Well, maybe we'll just scream about Russia instead. That seems to be the #1 threat to our democracy. Look.
Well, I would include that, sure.
No,
but there's a lot of stuff.
It's like 40th down the list of voting rights priorities that we need to be talking about right now. I think the Democrats went all in on that, which I don't think resonates with that many people, to be honest with you, when there are actually concrete threats that are daily threats to voting rights in the United States that just they don't fight on at all.
Okay, let's jump to another issue. Oh, we got some big, serious ones today. Despite the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic and an economic collapse, that is distracting people. And the government is using that to accomplish their goals, including goals such as doing damage to the environment if that's what it takes to make fossil fuel companies a little bit more profit. The Trump administration is expected in the coming days to lift Obama-era controls on the release of methane, a powerful climate-warming gas that is emitted from leaks and flares in oil and gas wells. So, there's still methane emissions and all of that. It's just that under Obama, he had some new regulations that were going to try to capture that. And the reason is that it's really bad for the environment and can lead to more climate change and global warming. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas that can be 25 times more impactful than carbon dioxide in equal quantities. Back in 2018, it accounted for nearly 10% of all U.S. greenhouse gas emissions caused by human activity, mostly from the oil and gas industry, although commercial agriculture and the cattle industry are also large contributors to methane emissions. So what's the new rule? The EPA's new methane rule eliminates federal requirements that oil and gas companies must install technology to detect and fix methane leaks from wells, pipelines, and storage sites. So that's effectively what Obama had put in place in the last years of his second term. Now, why would you want to remove that? Well, the EPA says that it has to be removed because they're crippling regulations on oil and gas. The EPA called them crippling regulations. Not just the oil and gas, the people who are supposed to protect not profits, but the environment. That's how they talked about it. And they said in particular that we can't have these crippling regulations in a time where companies are suffering from plummeting prices and falling demand driven by a sharp global economic slowdown. Now, admittedly, we are in the middle of an economic slowdown in the past few months, but the EPA was making that case a year ago. So I don't really trust the case that we need to get rid of these a year ago. So that just seems like opportunism. I don't think it actually has anything to do with that. And even if it did, you're not supposed to be a lobby group for oil and gas companies. You're supposed to be the one on the other side who protects the environment. They've got their lobbyists. They're well paid, and they're in D.C. every day trying to influence legislators. You're supposed to be a counterweight to that, not someone who's going to signal boost the fantasies of oil companies.
Yeah, it's a part of the Orwellian nature of a lot of what we're seeing with the Trump administration. So the Environmental Protection Agency is actually just allowing for oil and gas polluters to do whatever they want and run rampant, and using the shock doctrine, as Naomi Klein talks about, an economic collapse and mass unemployment and a pandemic and hundreds of thousands of Americans dead or going to be, to push forward what they want. And use that vacuum, that fear to basically deregulate and get rid of what Obama put in place, the kind of threadbare things that Obama put in place. So yeah, the Environmental Protection Agency doesn't protect the environment. It does the opposite. And what's been in the news lately, the Department of Homeland Security certainly does not make the homeland more secure. In fact, it terrorizes its own citizens, as we've seen in the streets of Portland and more. So it really is creepy and definitely not in the spirit of what America's supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Supposed to be the key word there.
Supposed to be. But it is in the spirit of what the EPA and the Trump government have been doing for the past few months. Just to catch you up, and much of this we've talked about on the show previously, back in April, the EPA weakened rules on the release of toxic chemicals from coal-fired power plants, loosened curbs on climate-warming tailpipe pollution, and opted not to strengthen a regulation on industrial soot emissions that have been linked to respiratory diseases, including COVID-19. That was a fun one they chose not to pursue. In July, President Trump unilaterally weakened one of the nation's bedrock conservation laws, the National Environmental Policy Act, limiting public review of federal infrastructure projects in an effort to speed up the permitting process for freeways, power plants, and pipelines. So boy, have they been a busy little group during this pandemic working to shred the environment, even in ways that particularly make us susceptible to the sort of pandemic we're in and the ones that will come in future years. And so I mostly wanted to include this to remind you of one of the stakes in the election is the future of these sorts of regulations. And in the same way that they were reversed by Trump, hypothetically, they could be reversed in the future. It remains to be seen whether that would happen. But while we're very understandably focused on the pandemic and on the protests and on the election and all of that, the issues that we had, the crises that we had going into 2020 still exist. Just to catch up on the last few days of headlines around climate change, I saw this one. This is fun. Disease-bearing ticks thrive as climate change heats up U.S., so that's cool. An iceberg the size of Manhattan broke off of Canada's final intact ice shelf. That's fun. And Arctic fires released more carbon in 2 months than Scandinavia will all year. One of my favorite new phrases we've had to learn, Arctic fires. You know, when the coldest part of the world is on fire for months.
And it's not an indie band. It's not the Arctic Monkeys opening for Arcade Fire.
Arctic Fire sounds great. I love it.
It
but
honestly,
not in reality.
It's like Crossfire, Hurricane, Arcade Fires everywhere.
Exactly. God, what a world. And it's getting worse. Hopefully we can limit some of the damage. Let's jump to a few of these super chats. Rob Shively says, Emma as Captain Marvel is perfect because she does most of her work off planet or out in the field facing the most horrendous challenges. Exactly.
Very nice. Don't know, not right now, because we're in a pandemic. Thought I would be. Thought I'd be on the road this whole year. Plans change.
Imagine how many Trump rallies and stuff you would have been covering if it wasn't 2020.
Well, look, yeah, I kind of wanted to. You know, just a couple times in a lifetime experience, aka like many tens of times in a lifetime experience. Yeah,
I've done it like once or twice. I'm good. You're better at it anyway. You should do it. Talak Kamath says, hello from India. Hello to India. Thank you, Talak. Let's see. Sage and Candle asks, are you going to cover this new hashtag Save the Children conspiracy theories? If it's what I think it is, I feel like we have talked about the Q and the fact that these like fake concerns about international pedophile rings are now at the core of every weird conspiracy theory, but they don't care about actual pedophiles that are going down legally. I don't know. The whole thing is very weird. Let's see. Elizabeth Waller had a super chat about the DNC lineup that we were talking about, saying David Dole's analysis of the convention lineup is spot on. Hashtag snoozefest. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that Bernie's going to be great and AFC is going to be great. And that's it. That's something. It's more than we get in any normal week. Over on Twitch, Kelly June says, I love the damage report. Thank you, Kelly June. And we've got some great pictures of dogs over on hashtag TDR Live. Thank you for that. And with that, why don't we jump back into the news? Today we're joined on the show by noted jock Emma Vigeland, and so I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of sports news for her, and so we've got it, because there's apparently continuing debate about whether sports should return while the pandemic is ongoing. Widespread reports suggest that the Big Ten is leaning towards pulling the plug on its fall sports season, with the other Power 5 conferences, the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the SEC in discussions and possibly following. Meanwhile, political leaders putting pressure on college football to continue, with Trump tweeting, play college football, and Rip Jim Jordan saying, America needs college football. I would argue they need to stop dying during a pandemic, and they need to be protected from evictions. After that, sure, yeah, they need college football. So we're going to have more on this. But I know that you've been following this debate about whether college football should return. What are your thoughts, and what do you think most of the players are thinking at this point?
I'm sure the players want to play. So that's not really relevant, though. I mean, some players can opt out, and a lot of first-round projected picks have opted out. But Trevor Lawrence, other star players, Justin Fields, have written letters saying we want to play, and that's the hashtag that they use. What's conveniently left out of these discussions is that what was also included in those letters was the desire to form a union, because these players don't get paid. They make millions and millions and millions of dollars for their universities, and white racist Trump supporting coaches and university presidents get tons of money, oftentimes paid more than NFL head coaches, because you know why? The players don't get paid, and they don't really go to school. They're just there to make money for the university. So in arguably the most exploitative modern sports, it's not arguably, it's the most exploitative thing I've seen in sports in decades, and it still remains as an institution. So it's this cultural thing. They get these players who are oftentimes the best athlete in their county or in their town, and who have dreams of playing in the NFL, and they exploit that, and they're usually poor, and they're often Black. And they don't pay them. They take all the money off their labor. They can't sell their likeness until they get to the NFL, but that's a huge if. Less than 2% of players in Division I college football programs make it to the NFL and cash in, and they could blow their ACL out and never be able to capitalize on it. And now they're asking them to play in a pandemic where offensive linemen are often categorized as obese. They could completely get very sick. And it's really just the breaking point, because now the NCAA has to talk about how these are not college athletes. They say, oh, it's a part of the academic experience, right? No, they're semi-professional athletes that you guys have exploited for their labor and not paid them wages and fair compensation for everything they've done for your university. And I want college players to see the bigger picture here, but it's really hard to say you have 4 years to prove yourself to the NFL where you can bank on this and make millions. No, you should sit out. They're not going to do that. And so that's what college football uses to keep them in this exploitative system, and I think it's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know basically anything about this. Some of those conferences, I probably didn't even pronounce it correctly, but so correct me if I'm wrong. But hypothetically, if none of it happened, then all of the players would be on equal ground. Their careers would be hurt, obviously, but they'd all be on equal ground. If the playing continues, but it's up to players to decide whether they want to play, then there's a huge incentive to play, because if you don't, others will. They'll get those opportunities and get the payback for all of the work that they've put in. You won't, even though you've done almost all of that work. And you're not getting paid immediately either way. So that seems like there would be a huge amount of pressure to put yourself in a dangerous situation and potentially hurt yourself for the rest of your life or spread it to other people.
Exactly. But it's just an extreme example of what college football has already done to these players. And I mean, the NFL, we talk about how there are a million things wrong with the NFL, but they've put protocols in place. We've seen that sports can be done in a pandemic. The NBA has 0 positive cases. The NHL has 0 positive cases. Of course, their 2 bubbles are in Canada. These things can happen. Industries can be smart and move forward in this way. Baseball's, obviously a disaster. But college football, they're all independent conferences overseen by the NCAA. You have the Big Ten, you have the SEC, you have the ACC, whatever, and they all act as independent actors. And they're just deciding in August, when ball is supposed to start in September, maybe we'll put some protocols in place. Who knows? We're going to decide in a few days if college football is supposed to start. I mean, I don't say this lightly. The way that these programs like in Clemson or Alabama, and Alabama's a little more pro style, but these college football programs in the South treat their players, it echoes remnants of slavery and the way that they just think they can do whatever they want to poor Black kids. Yeah. And it makes me sick. But there's no other alternative path to the NFL. There's requirements that you have to go through the college system. And that's what players think they have to deal with, but they could destroy their health on the path to get there, and very few actually get there.
Yeah, it's very to give an analogy for something I actually know a little bit about, it's very Hunger Games.
Yep.
Like, you should suffer and compete and more than likely get nothing just for the chance of doing well.
And these kids come, I mean, I can't overstate how many of these kids come from poor backgrounds. And then when they get to the league, I'm all for players' rights. I want these billionaire owners to pay so much more to their players because they have 3 to 5 year careers oftentimes, and they have to cash in as much as they can because their families are relying on them. And it sometimes paves the way for generational wealth for people who grew up dirt poor in many of these instances in the South.
Yeah. It should just, I know I'm speaking about something I don't really know. It should have nothing to do with college. Just have like the XFL be the non-NFL for younger, just starting players or something like that.
No,
I don't know.
You're right, John. And the NBA is starting on the path to like circumventing the college system. They only have 1 year. You only have to be 1 year in basketball, which is just way better. And they don't even need to go. That's not a requirement. So you got me going.
Oh, geez. Yeah, no, I saw people in the comments who were like, you can tell Emma's passionate about this. See, that's why we have to have you on, because everybody brings passion to different things, and I just can't really make it happen for sports.
Pay
fictional
the players.
Sports.
Pay the players.
Exactly. Okay, with that, let's jump to something else I don't generally have much passion about, but I think this is going to be kind of fun. So, Cardi B has a new song, I've heard, and I don't listen to a lot of music. So I just kind of like go about my life, but not everyone can do that. Some people have to go search out the things that they say they hate and then make themselves look absolutely ridiculous by commenting about it. And we have perhaps the funniest example of that ever. And that is Ben Shapiro breaking down literally the lyrics, sort of, a little bit censored, of this song. Take a look.
Here are some of the lyrics. You ready? Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. Hold up. I said certified.
It gets, oh my God.
Conservative,
it gets
that's
really
your
hot.
alpha?
I mean, vulgar. What's that?
That's your alpha conservative?
Yeah,
that's your alpha male?
Oh, I'm going to have some references for you here. But like, I love, like, you know what I love is when someone who has never once spoken positively or fairly about a thing tells you what that thing is actually really about. Like you would know. I fear that after.
He said rap music isn't music. He said rap music isn't music.
Oh, I've got graphics. Don't worry.
Sorry.
I'm gonna go to some of those. Him reading the lyrics to that song make me never want to have sex again in my life. It's the unhottest thing since the Big Bang, which is pretty hot, honestly.
Since the Big Bang Theory, to be honest.
Exactly.
Trash.
And here's the thing. I can't say for sure, because I don't watch his show, I can't say for sure to what extent he's joking with his audience. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. Because if he's being totally serious and just is the biggest unsexy nerd ever reading those lyrics and just like he's like a 90-year-old in a 40-year-old's body, I don't know, then that's embarrassing. But if he's just joking and in the end really does believe that this music is bad and this is what feminism is about and we're not supposed to talk about sex or enjoy it or any of that, I don't care if you're sort of on the surface joking, you actually advocate for that sort of approach to life and sexuality and romance and relationships and all of that. So it's lame either way.
Yeah, I mean, God, that guy really, I would not want to think about how he thinks about sex. There is just, it's just under the covers, lights off, nothing fun about it.
Seriously, my wife and I were thinking about starting a family, and we're not anymore after watching that video.
The birth rate for the United States goes down like by 25%, and everyone talks about the great Ben Shapiro WAP reciting of 2020 as the reason. Just no libido anymore.
Exactly. Men used to think about baseball to hold things off. We've got a new contender. But anyway, that's not the most embarrassing part of it. The most embarrassing part of it comes in the second video where he attempts to turn from his social commentary to a little bit of public health advice to these women who are suffering from wet ass pee, in his words.
Just a serious pH imbalance. So I asked my wife for a differential diagnosis for the sake of these ladies in case they need to go to the doctor. I mean, like, this is a problem. I mean, like, if this is real, like, there's water pouring out the front doors of this place, and that ain't water, guys. I mean, that's what I'm being told. That ain't water. So the medical here was her differential. Her differential diagnosis, my wife, the doctor, was either these women are suffering from bacterial vaginosis or a yeast infection, or my wife suggested most probably they are suffering from trichomonas. So just a bit of medical advice. Put aside the empowerment.
So, I watched enough House. He mispronounced that last one. But anyway, I can only say so much because this is a family program. But the idea that both him and his wife find what's being described in that song as so inconceivable that it has to be a medical problem says things. I'm not going to say those things
about Ben.
I'm not going to say anything, but maybe I already have. It's a family program.
They thought it was humorous, though. They thought it was humorous to talk about the medical problem.
Yeah.
You know here's the thing. Who looks like the idiot? You. I mean, oh.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Again, I'm sure on some level he thinks that he's joking around, even though he doesn't get the joke that he's telling. The issue is that he's also really bad in this area. I want to show you just a few things. The first is just fun. I want to give credit to Reverend Lewis on Twitter with this image of Ben Shapiro being attacked by the lyrics from the song. Oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Someone photoshopped his crying face onto that guy. Which I have saved on my phone.
And obviously there's the videos of his little reading of the lyrics being turned into the song. You should definitely go check that out. But back in 2012, he just put a tweet. Fact, rap isn't music. And if you think it is, you're stupid. Yeah, he's just a reasonable guy, Yeah, he's not lame in any way. He's not an old man.
Not racist at all.
No, it's not racist.
No.
Ben Dixon had replied to that, I saw like a year or two ago, just saying before little Ben learned how to dog whistle. And the thing is, his views on music have been weird. Take a look at this. These are other right-wing channels commenting on him destroying Ariana Grande because he apparently does these videos about Ariana Grande. And look, I get it. If you're obsessed with her, I get being obsessed with her. But you don't have to make your news show about it. That seems weird.
He's extremely sexually repressed, and it's super obvious. And I mean, again, he just argued that empathy was bad for politics. To understand music that you may have not been initially exposed to as a 5-year-old, I know he's a big classical music fan, so he grew up with it and refuses to expand his horizons because everything else is in music except what I listen to. So that's the only thing that he can understand. Empathy is partially understanding different things outside yourself.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to understand things outside his little bubble with his wife. They seem to really have it all figured out.
They do. Yeah, I don't like a lot of music. I listened to the song. I thought it was fine. I don't love it. You know what? I might just not listen to it again.
I just think it's
okay. Just don't listen to it.
Funny. I just think it's I love Cardi. She just puts
I love
out there. That's why I like it because
I like her more than I like the song. But I don't have to listen to stuff I don't like or read stuff I don't like or watch stuff I don't like. You can do that. And it doesn't he doesn't like a song and that becomes feminism was always a lie. No, dude, if people are free to do what they want, they can do all sorts of things, some of which you'll like and some of which you won't. That should be the goal. She's not killing anybody. She's not hurting anybody. She's writing music and lots of people love it. That's not a problem.
He talked about Susan B. Anthony there. That's the only, he can only see, feminists have to look, dress, and act like Susan B. Anthony or else it doesn't count. Yeah, that's what she said. That's what she said about it, and Susan Anthony.
That's true. They want you to believe, these modern right-wing, whatever Ben Shapiro is, they want you to believe that their opposition to feminism, it's not that they're 1920s guys. They just think that there's a reason why men get paid more or whatever. It's just a disagreement. No, we totally are for equality. It's just the men, get paid. No, you want women to be barefoot in the kitchen, cooking and being ashamed of their sexuality. It is literally as pathetic and lame as the men of 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It is the exact same worldview. That is how sad and pathetic you are, and how That is the shallow, weak foundation that your sense of your own masculinity rests on, that it can only hold if the women around you are what you require them to be. Anything more is too much. It's too much of a challenge. And that would be fine for these men to be so pathetic. It's that they are allowed to pretend that they're not, and they're given the veneer of being something new or different in articles like this. Remember this from 2017? Ben Shapiro, a provocative gladiator, battles to win young conservatives. And I want to read a graphic from this. Mr. Shapiro, conservative thinker, entertainer, trash talker, and destroyer of weak arguments. Did you see that during the WAP thing? Has been called the voice of the conservative millennial movement. He represents the tastes of an emerging political class. If Rush Limbaugh is someone your dad listens to, Mr. Shapiro is the cool kid's philosopher, dissecting arguments with a lawyer's skill and references to Aristotle. No, he's as lame as your dad or Rush Limbaugh's dad. It's not cool. It's not cool to think that because rap is liked by some people who aren't white, it's not music. And women should be ashamed of their sexuality. There's nothing cool about that. There's nothing gladiator about that. That's Bill O'Reilly with slightly fewer wrinkles as of today. That's all it is.
And by the way, all the dads that were listening to Rush Limbaugh in the car, and then the kids that turn on Ben Shapiro, they all probably like the Rolling Stones or Kiss or whatever, hair metal, which talk about women in extremely vulgar ways. And they don't seem to have a problem with that whatsoever. It's when women have vulgarity and sexuality in their songs, that's when they turn around and talk about, oh, the culture.
The culture. No. You're wrong. I pine for those old days when you could just have wholesome songs about wholesome topics like baked goods. That's why I love Cherry Pie so much. What a wholesome song.
Afternoon Delight. It's just
Afternoon
when you get
Delight.
a snack at 3 p.m.
It's not just that they're lame. It's like when we point out that someone's a racist or a misogynist, they think, well, you're just trying to like make it so that people won't respect you. No, but like understand that it isn't just the racism. It isn't just the misogyny. It is a symptom of a mind that is weak and that is easily manipulated by its own biases to not see things accurately. If you label rap not music because it's vulgar, you are too stupid to understand that all music has vulgar instances of itself. That has nothing to do with rap at all. But you're a racist, so you cannot look objectively at what is actually going on. It isn't just racism. It's what racism and misogyny and transphobia and Islamophobia and all the phobias do to a person's ability to analyze the real world. And if you suffer from all of those things, you don't get to be the provocative gladiator or the cool kid's philosopher or any of that. You are just as weighed down by your own mental flaws as any Rush Limbaugh or Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity or any of them. Yeah, you got a show on YouTube. That's the only difference. You're exactly the same as all of those other relics. Anyway.
Boom. Talk about a clean end to a segment. Ooh.
There's your act break.
There we go.
Anyway, you know what? We have just a couple more minutes. Let's switch it up just for a sec, if you're okay with that, Emma.
Sure.
And if you're not, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Come at me, Captain Marvel. What are you gonna do? Come on. Anyway, it's now August, but the weird fad of going into a grocery store to freak out on people because they want you to wear a mask, it continues. Take a look at what was filmed at a grocery store in Tucson.
People won't learn. These people won't learn. You're a bunch of idiots wearing masks. You know it's not real. Look at you fools. Doily on your face. You look like you got it off your mom's countertop. You look like an idiot. You're a child. Trying to make you wear a mask. Shut up. Shut up. Yelling at people. You're a dork. Look at you, you dumb. What are you going to do? Boy, come outside. Come outside, somebody. I'll tell I'll mask off your face. You're a bunch of wearing masks. Loser.
Goodbye.
That's my favorite person in the video. Hi. Have a nice day.
He was dragged out by his son. His son effectively carried him out like a baby, which he was being, because he couldn't control himself that other people were wearing masks in a pandemic that has killed 163,000 people. Thoughts?
How has this become a cultural issue? We know why. We know why and how. And we know that it basically rests at the feet of particularly one person, because if Trump wore a mask, talked about wearing a mask, you know who would wear a mask and talk about wearing a mask? Like all of
that guy.
People. That guy, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, everybody that they care about. Ben Shapiro would be wearing masks with
on his show
music notes on it. Yeah, I mean, it's just like they'd be all over it. And you know who would also wear masks? Leftists and people who care about protecting other people, and then we'd be fine. But that's not the reality we live in anymore. It's a cultural issue, and Trump wants to stir up culture wars no matter how many bodies are in his wake.
Exactly. Yeah, I know some people might say, well, no, if it was reversed, then Emma and John, you wouldn't be wearing a mask. You know what? Maybe right, but I really do doubt it. I just really do. Like, I listen to the doctors, and I think that the doctors wouldn't be lying if it was, if Trump, I've been asking Trump to tell people to wear masks. Why have I been advocating for that? I've even advocated for it while saying this will help him win the election because I care about the bodies. So I don't buy that. I think it is primarily culturally a male thing because men are far more scared of looking weak than of looking cruel or stupid.
You look like a P word, as Ben Shapiro would say, with your mask. Yeah. You're protecting other people. Real men spit in each other's faces and each other diseases all day.
I watched this movie yesterday called El Chicano, and it's about this vigilante who like cleans the streets of like cartel members. And I thought it was like kind of cool. But like he wears like this like awesome mask that makes him look lame and like a wussy. No, masks don't make you look weak, you stupid idiot. Your stupidity makes you look weak. Your cruelty towards your fellow man makes you look weak because real heroes don't try to kill people around them so they can avoid having cloth on their face, you idiot. So anyway, it's still continuing. And look, we could play 10 of these a day. We choose not to. I wanted to show this one because I just wanted to say I went on a hike with my wife and I go on walks with my dog, and I have started seeing more and more people, even in LA, not wearing masks. And I just really do think, and I know it's anecdotal and all of that, but there is everything about what makes America, America, and Americans, Americans has set us up to be uniquely ill-equipped to deal with this pandemic. Like all of our personal characteristics have caused us to surrender to this thing in a way that no other country seems to be. Other countries have failed leadership, but I don't think that they have a failed population like we do that won't protect itself from a preventable disease. It's so sad.
Well, geez, John.
It is.
No, you're
American exceptionalism is true in some respects.
No, you're right.
And really fast, let me just update you on two others. Man slugs teenage worker at children's theme park over mask mandate. That's a fun one. That's what a real strong man does. An anti-mask agency told a grocery store worker she could be sued for asking people to wear masks. Turns out it's not real. It's just people claiming to be from this agency because that is easier than just wearing a mask. No, it's everywhere. Until there is a vaccine, we're not going to get past this thing. And even once there's a vaccine, 20% of the population is going to choose not to take it, and they're going to continue to suffer. Most of us will be protected, but they'll suffer. And those who can't be vaccinated, the elderly and people with certain issues, are going to continue to be at risk because of the person you saw in that video and the millions like him.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry to be cynical to end the show, but you can't look around America realistically and not be cynical about a great many things. Anyway, probably should have ended on the Ben Shapiro one, maybe. But anyway, Emma, always good to have you here. Where can people see more of your videos?
YouTube.com/RebelHQ, Facebook.com/RebelHQ, Bing, 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 Bing. Follow me there on the social media at Emma Vigeland. You know the drill.
Exactly. And by the way, your YouTube channel has been blowing up. Your videos are getting watched by so many people. It's absolutely awesome, and more people should be. And now I'm going to have to go. You're welcome. I'm going to have to go watch that Trump compilation of the Bing Bing Bong. One of my favorite.
That's what I got it from. I've become my boyfriend and I have become obsessed with it and say Bing Bing wait in like social occasions where we shouldn't, and no one knows what we're talking about. So great.
You know what? I'm playing it on the show tomorrow. I don't care. It'll make me feel better. I'm gonna do that. It is. Anyway, with that, Emma, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Later. Bye.
And everyone at home, let's see a few of these super chats and comments and all of that. Let's see. The Carfax, thank you for your heart super chat. Wellington Smith says, John and Emma, I'm writing to my county supervisor to ask him to designate our parks as tent cities so that the newly homeless will have a place to go. Is this a good idea? I mean, obviously it's not as good as what could be done to stop it from happening, but you don't have power over that. So of what you have power over, it seems admirable. Kitaboo Forever says, hey, John, I think I like TDR better like this than back before the pandemic. I feel more connected to you and your co-hosts. Everything going back to normal will be bittersweet. I agree, although obviously better because less people will be dying and people will get their jobs back, hopefully. I am assuming that one of two things might make you feel better. One is that the show, even once everything is back to normal, is going to be affected by this and will be different in some ways. So hopefully those will be positive. The other is that we can look forward to the next pandemic when I'm locked down again and we're doing it from home again. Yay. Sadiq Muhammad, thank you for your goal. Appreciate that. Dan Anthony says, told you yesterday that WAP is fire. I love that it's a topic on the show today. Heart TDR. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. Carla says Jim Jordan should not be allowed to comment on any college sport. That is definitely true. Thank you for reminding me of that. Jackson Kissling says this is the best segment ever. TDR, shut up and take my money. Thank you. Thank you. He did give us that at least. Okay, let's see. Scott Fleming says mark the calendar. John defended music. It won't happen again anytime soon. Ty Strong says a great poet by the name of Jay-Z once said, if you don't like me, fine. It costs you nothing. Pay me no mind. Yeah, unfortunately, some people can't do that because the thing is, if you just didn't like a song, you wouldn't talk about it. But if you are attempting to appeal to an audience that thinks of certain people's music as lesser and they want to hear you attack it so they can feel that hate towards that group, then you have to comment on it. And that is what's actually going on here. Over on Twitch, Cisco Kid says, I need TYT Bart's remix of that song, please. Bart says, I don't know where to begin on a Ben Shapiro remix of that song. I may lose my lunch because of Ben. That is true, but I do miss the old Bart mashups, and there's a lot of audio there that you could do a lot of work with. By the way, you need to bring back the drunk Ben Shapiro you made. That was pretty good. John's Venn Diagram of Desire on Twitch said, OMG, Emma's Ben impersonation is amazing. Agreed. C-Dub says, you guys have me cracking up. Emma was a great guest for today's topics. Love you guys for discussing the news in ways that we can relate to and have a little fun with. I heard Ben's WAP recitation caused many men to become eunuchs. Masks are just another chance to personalize. I've got a Spider-Man, Jack Skellington, and Bill and Ted one on the way. I need to get a cool mask.